G'day, Bomber fans. We are back. Footy is back. It feels like it's been a while, hasn't it? But we're back in action this week. The Bombers are playing footy, and it's a big game. Reinforcements arrive. Players are back from injury. More are on the sidelines at the same time as well, but we'll forget about that. But yeah, the Bombers are hosting Gold Coast at Marvel Stadium this weekend, and this is a game I reckon the fans want the club to turn up for a bit. Last year, the Gold Coast, they put a nail in our coffin for finals, and this year, I think, there's a bit of a reversal. Maybe we can try and disrupt their road to the 8. So yeah, big game, a revenge game. Let's get into it, but first some votes from the Freo match. Long time ago now, I didn't even remember what votes I'd given it first, but it's all youth. Nate Caddy gets 3 and 3. Archie Roberts and Jai Caldwell swap between 2 and 1, and the role player for me was Setterfield. For you guys, it was a 3-way race between Lomanuel, Jackson Pryor, and the eventual vote getter Vigo Vicentini, who was fun on debut. The overall tally, Nick Martin still leads on 26, 3 votes ahead of Zach Merritt. There is a game's worth of votes between 2nd and 3rd. Caldwell's jumped up to 3rd, ahead of Dersma and Durham. Zach Reid is still in 6th and could be back this weekend. Down the other end of the field, we've got Nate Caddy, who's jumped to 7th, Setterfield to 8th, and Wright and McGrath round out the top 10. Keep up the votes. Essendon versus Gold Coast. Really interesting matchup lately. At first it was a bit funky. Everyone remembers that 94-1 quarter time scoreline. But the last few times these teams have played, it has been eventful or close, or both. Last year we had the Mac Andrew after the siren goal. That was crazy. The first game last year was also tied up north. You go back a few years, Sam Draper's goal of the year. Back in 2020, the two teams drew, and then there were some close games in 2019 and 18, I think. There have been some really fun games between the Bombers and the Suns lately. This time around, though, we're well and truly the underdogs. We have been underdogs against the Suns before, but this is a game pretty much everyone will go into thinking that, the more likely outcome is an Essendon loss. And that does make sense. The Bombers are struggling, falling down the ladder. We've lost our last 4 games. Gold Coast, they just broke a little losing streak. They won their last game. But this team is well and truly entrenched in the 8 when you remember that they've got a game in hand. If they played opening round and beat us up in Queensland, they would be 4th or 5th on the ladder right now. Instead, they're 8th. We are 13th. The Suns are a better team than us. They're a fitter team than us. We've got players returning from injury, but not enough to be called a fit team yet. The one thing in our favour is the location, Marvel Stadium, because Damien Hardwick bloody hates playing footy here, and it shows with his club's form at the ground. They did manage to beat St Kilda recently, but before that they had lost 4 of their last 5 at Marvel Stadium, and in those losses were games against North Melbourne, St Kilda last year, even Richmond this year. So Gold Coast, their form at Marvel Stadium opens the door for a potential upset for Essendon. I think it's safe to say this game is winnable for the Bombers, so we got to find ways to win it. Alrighty, Gold Coast. On paper, unbelievable team, the Suns. The issue with them has never been talent. It's about that talent staying true and consistent for a full season, because last year there were some crazy figures and differentials between players playing at home and away, and the difference in quality after, hopping off a flight or at a new ground. And it's why they're 8th and not 1st on the ladder. Like, they're good, but they're not great yet. At their best, they are. They've beaten the Dogs, the Crows, the Hawks. All those wins came at home, though, and away from home, it gets a bit tougher for the Suns. So, on paper, it's a brilliant side. You've got Sam Collins down back with Mac Andrew. You've got Noble and Riolu, who I'm going to talk about a bit more in a second. They're well suited for Marvel Stadium. You move up the ground, you've got Rowell in the guts with Miller and Anderson, Witts in the ruck, Humphrey there as well. You've got Ben King up forward, Ben Long, Ben Ainsworth, every Ben in the world. There are some real players on this team, and there's a reason why they're good. A lot of their younger players from a few years ago, they are now grown up, playing good footy, playing awesome footy. It's almost like finishing lower on the ladder and playing the kids can result in good footy down the line. But let's backtrack. Let's look at their weapons that really do suit the Marvel Stadium surface. So I think the importance of the contest is important. But for me, to start, the most the most crucial aspect of this game that the Bombers need to be putting a stop to is the flow the Suns get out of their defensive half. There is no side in the competition who gets more meters gained per disposal than Gold Coast, and there's only one side who transitions the ball better from their defensive half to their forward 50 than the Suns. And a big reason for that is John Noble and Dan Rioli. Those two plus ball users in Newland and Powell, and even someone like Joel Jeffrey. It is so easy for the Suns to move the footy around once it's in their D50. They either do it through leg speed or ball speed, and on a ground like Marvel, it makes it so much easier. The ball really does ping around there. So one thing I am worried about heading into this game is the impact that Noble and Rioli and those other names can have, or even the hard-working Noah Anderson working up and down the field. I feel like this ground should be built for those types of players, and on the flip side, Essendon are one of the worst teams at defending ball movement. No side allows more footy to flow from their forward 50 to their defensive 50. No side allows more scores to generate from their own forward line. Only one team concedes more turnovers, score from turnovers, sorry. That is why I think this is a really good test for us, because realistically, the Suns have a big advantage, and a big advantage in the area of the ground that we're very weak in. So on a ground that is typically easy to move the footy on, we are going to be up against it against a side who likes to move the footy by foot, lots of long direct kicking, lots of line breaking speed. So keep that in mind when entering your tips. Now, something we might not talk about as much, we probably do anyway, because we know how good their midfield is, but despite the Suns having real strength out of their back half, they actually do serious damage out of stoppages. They're the third best team at scoring from turnovers, not only from individual scores, but differential in a game. They've got a really strong core midfield group. Jared Witts has been always great in the ruck. Rowell is a beast. Anderson is awesome. P.O.T.Y Miller has returned to some of his best form this year. Those four trounce our midfield any day of the week. Those are their four highest CBA attendance mids, or three of them are. Gold Coast have Anderson, Witts and Rowell in over 80% of their centre bounces. They are heavily reliant on those three players rotating around at stoppages, and they are around the ground as well. And then the next spot is made up of P.O.T.Y Miller or Bailey Humphrey. Those five players are their midfield options. That is both good and bad news for Essendon. The bad news is those five players, Witts, Rowell, Anderson, Miller and Humphrey, are better than our midfield group. They're better than most midfield groups. There is such a good blend of grit and class in there, and there's real explosive dynamism in some of those players as well. The issue for Gold Coast, and this is something that we should really try and exploit, after those five players, there isn't really much to their engine room. They don't have a heavy rotation-based midfield. It's really reliant on the output of the players already in there, which is why a tag is crucial in this game. And it makes Will Setterfield a very important player. He'll need to come in and play a defensive role on Noah Anderson or Matt Rowell, probably more likely Noah Anderson. And that is how we start to think about getting in this game. Because if we can take the influence away from one of their three starting midfielders, one of those 80% CBA gangs, it means that they're up against it and have to find new ways to get the most out of their midfield battle, maybe bring new players in there. Most of the time they'd go out and win the clearance battle against teams they play, but they do struggle when their best midfielders are having quiet games. So when Anderson was kept quiet against the Cats, it was a win for Geelong. When Rowell had 16 touches against the Lions won. So we need to try and keep one of those two down at the contest, limit the amount of footy they get, and try and get Hardwick stressing about moving the magnets. So the way this game plays out, both in an ideal and worst case scenario world, looks very different. In an ideal world, we are winning the footy at the contest, we are keeping Anderson down, we're beating their midfield and possessing the ball inside our forward 50 more than Gold Coast would like. That is easier said than done, by the way. The Suns are the highest inside 50 team in the competition and we're the second lowest, but the Suns are below average at scoring goals from their entries. And with numbers back in defence, with Reid and Ridley hopefully back, it really becomes about how we first off limit the footy they get in their forward half and defending it when it is in there. So for us, the most important area of the ground is the midfield and defending ball movement from their defensive half. I think we need to be really good at the contest. If this game is contested, if the ball is hard to move freely in open play, that could really benefit the Bombers and make it harder for the Suns to utilise space the way they like it. But if they have the upper hand, this game is going to look very attractive. There'll be lots of good kicking chains. The Suns per disposal will gather more distance than any team in the competition. Even the new footy stat, speed of ball movement, the Suns are ranked right near the top, and it's more because of the length of their disposals. Lots of long kicks, slight angle changes with penetrating kicks that put moving zones under pressure. I think really to win this game, we got to break even in that engine room, if not beat them, and then hope that Ridley and Reid, if they return, are back in form and steady on those Gold Coast keys. We have to have Kako and Gresham if he plays, and Guelphy really locking down on Noble and Rioli, and I expect Guelphy will have a role on one of those players. And then it's, keeping their key forwards, keeping King down, keeping Ben Long down. That's a player that we really have to be wary of, I think. They've got some really dangerous players, Gold Coast, that can tear this game apart, and we've got to keep quite a few of them down, I think. And this isn't this specific game type thing, but for the rest of the season, or post-bye, for the rest of this season, I'm not going to care too much about wins and losses. Finals is gone. We're not going to be in the 8. What I want to see from the Bombers is some wins that we were not predicted to win. We've done well to beat teams below us. We've contended with some teams above us. Now I want us to go out and take that step further and win games as an underdog. Whether it's against Gold Coast this weekend, GWS the week after, Sydney at the SCG, even the Dogs. The Bombers have 9 games left this year. 5 of them are against top 8 or 9 teams. The other 4 are against Richmond, St Kilda, Carlton and Sydney. If we can win a couple of those easier games and also beat a team or 2 that we shouldn't, then, or given the circumstances, that would give us a lot of reason to be excited going into next year, because we're going to keep playing the kids. A lot of these guys won't be exiting the team despite players returning from injury. I don't think wins and losses are important to our season, but I do think it is going to be great to get a morale booster for the fans and players if we were to go out and win some games like this. Whether it's, hard to tip us or because, we've got a team that usually bullies us. But I think I'd like to see us go out and get the job done against some teams like Gold Coast. It doesn't have to be Gold Coast. It can be the Bulldogs. It can be Sydney at the SCG. Even Carlton later in the year as well. It would be fun to see that. And also, it would be fun to see some highlights in the process. It'd be good to see the kids again, Caddy, Kako, Roberts, Clark, Johnson. It would be good to see them break out again. Yes, we've got players back from injury, and that is why there are not really any excuses for a belting anymore. But despite that, I still think it's about the kids and what they can do and how they grow together under this system and whether or not they can push some of the mature players out of the side. So yes, it is all about the kids still, despite us having players coming back from injury. Team news, starting with Gold Coast. There's not a lot to talk about. I believe they're probably going to go in unchanged, no injuries or anything. Essendon, we've got players returning, we've got players leaving. So Zach Reid and Ridley should be good to go. Langford and Parrish are not good to go. Sardell Hawley probably comes back through the VFL. But yeah, Parrish is out of the side. That's the one forced change. I think Durham probably just comes straight back in for him. I think Reid replaces Blackiston and Ridley. Some would say Laverty. I think we might keep Laverty in to combat those forwards like Walter and even Ben Long and Ethan Reid. I think a different position could get dropped, and I think it could either be Luan Lawal, who's dropped back to the VFL to allow Clark to play on the wing. Maybe Ben Hobbs again gets dropped. Maybe Perkins. I think he probably stays in the team though. Some would say Gresham. Something tells me he'll get another go. I think it's Ben Hobbs. And the ruck situation, Goldie comes back in for Vigo. I believe Vigo's been a bit sore lately, and there is not much point playing him if he is sore. It's not like we're going to be better with him in the team. We'd be playing him for the future, if anything, and it makes sense to, do that if he's 100% fit. So I think Goldie comes back in after his rest, Durham after his suspension, Ridley and Reid after their injuries. I think Parrish comes out through injury, Blackiston comes out, Hobbs and Vigo as well. So that is the team news. Very hard to pick a team this week. It'll be a very interesting team selection video on Friday, but let's get into the prediction. So do I think Essendon can win this game? Yes, I do. I was tempted to tip us in an upset, but I'm going to go brains over heart. I think the Suns have better names on paper. They've got a system and setup that really suits their best players. We unfortunately just don't have that at the moment, and part of that's because of our age, and part of it's because of our lack of real proper first team talent. I think we're building in the right direction, but the Suns are, past the stage that we're at. They are where we hope to be in a few years' time. We are where they were a few years ago, and I think it's pretty clear to see that if you look at where they were a few years ago. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be too surprised if we win. I feel like we've shown we can beat or contend with better teams than Gold Coast with worse players at our disposal. It just depends if we show up. You know, if the Suns show up, I think it's probably tough to get the win. But yeah, I think more has to go right for us to win this game than lose it. I'm going to tip the Suns by 18 points. I don't think either team wins with ease. We certainly won't. But yeah, I think it's the Suns who get it done. That is not all, because I, for the first time in my life, have remembered. NATO has been asking me to do this and I keep forgetting, but I've got tips for the rest of the round. I bet he's already in the comments ready, thinking that I've forgotten to do this again, but here we go. Here are my tips for the rest of the round. I've got the Dogs to beat the Brews comfortably, the Pies to beat the Blues. I think that could be close though. It just gives those vibes. GWS to beat West Coast with a potential of an upset. Suns to beat Essendon. Geelong to beat Richmond. Brisbane to beat Port. Hawthorn to beat St Kilda. I've got the Swans beating the Dockers. That's probably the upset of the video. And rounding it out, Adelaide defeating Melbourne. So yeah, that is that. Prediction, preview, tips for the round as well. You guys get everything. Cheers for watching, Bomber fans. Like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Comment down below who you think will win and by how much. And as always, go Bombers.